way I'm going. There ain't got no way, I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. No. There ain't got no way, I'm gonna make.
As we come back to this episode entitled Welcome to the Autism Voyage with Michael Pereira. And Michael is live with us in the house. So, Michael, I just want to go to this question now. And when we looked at the spotlight video earlier, you were not on yet. We were told that the diagnosis can be made by either a medical doctor or a psychologist. So the question is there both physical and mental strains that this child can now face as a result of being diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder?
I think it depends because there are severity or levels. In my case, in our case, Christian is mild.
Yeah.
You know that there's two other levels that depending on that and depending on how severe it could be in some cases, you know, it could be. I understand it. It could also be that then comes the disability, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it really depends. I'm really not everything changes. Even the word autism before was another, and as time passes by, everything is changing. So I really don't know up to date how is everything managed today. But what I can tell is that there are levels, and based on the level and the need and the support, that's the type of care and diagnosis that child would get.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Gabriella?
Right, great. I just want to shift a little bit concerning the voyage, the aspect about life planning. What are some misconception or the biggest misconception that special needs planning, how do family put themselves at a risk when it comes to special needs planning?
Uh, they everybody just thinks they have time.
Hmm.
uh, and that's something that we may think we have time, but we don't. We don't. It's like I mentioned before. It's very hard to be a functioning parent while being exhausted, and
Hmm.
when you're exhausted, it's very difficult to think about the future.
Yeah.
So, what I see that the common mistakes are is that there's a lot of parents that procrastinate, thinking again that they have time, which if you delay comes with consequences and it becomes more expensive. So it's not the same as insuring somebody who's 20, 30 versus an individual or somebody that's 50, right? It becomes more expensive. So everything becomes more expensive with time. So again, misconceptions and I would say mistake is that there's a lot of procrastination. There's a lot of, what I see a lot is that there's this concept of do it yourself, and you think that you have everything in place, and as a parent with special needs, you know what you know. But when you're doing stuff yourself and you're not talking to professionals,
Yeah.
what I see is that you're you're like going on cruise control the wrong way, and I see that a lot, right? Because you're planning, you're making decisions, but you're not seeing that a lot of other stuff that you're not taking into consideration because you don't know. So that's why I'm saying that I see a lot of families that they feel that they're in cruise control, but they're going the wrong way. So I see that a lot. I also see that there's a lot of families that are relying too much on employer benefits, where at the end of the day, if you leave that employer, at least here in the States, if you leave that employer, you don't leave with the benefits. you know So a lot of people say, I already have it. My employer, they take care of me until you leave or they make you leave, right? So having an independent plan is always the recommended plan of action.
Yeah. Awesome. And how can families begin those conversations about guardianship and independence and long-term care planning without feeling overwhelmed?
There's no easy way. There's no easy way. I think it's more getting used to and having those hard conversations because after
Yeah.
you start those hard conversations, they become easy, right? Because now you're releasing all these misbeliefs or whatever you have in your mind. By having these conversations, you're going to see that you're going to feel actually secure because you have a plan, right? Um, so I would say having those conversations with, depending obviously here in the States, you can start a conversation with an attorney that, focuses on trust, guardianship, power of attorneys, and then also talk. But my recommendation, I would say to any family that's listening, you gotta learn how to create your own A team. When I say you gotta learn how to create your own A team, is there's different A teams. So one of our A teams is that there's the therapist, it's us, it's Christian, and that's our team. So we as a team, we huddle, we talk, we strategize, we see what's working, what's not. The same thing from a financial view, you should have your own A team. So you should have an attorney, you should have a financial advisor, you should have an accountant. And at one point, all these need to talk to see what's the best plan based on the best interest for your family. So you gotta learn how to create that and not expect to anybody to tell you what to do, right? You don't need to ask for permission. I think it's around having those conversations, getting people in those circles of influence, and be able to have a conversation based on your unique needs, goals, and everything you need at this moment. Because when you have a special needs child, you're not only planning for your generation, it's two generations. So that's why it's important that you have a team.
Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't even know, like, think that long, that far ahead that you need to have a whole team. So this is really insightful information. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing that. Just one more question before I hand over to Andy. Do you see any current gaps when it comes to the education or the health system, maybe in the US or in general, when it comes to children who are autistic, and what practical reforms would you advise or suggest?
For me, there is always going to be gaps when it's government provided, right? What the gaps, the main two gaps I would say I see as a parent: first, access. There's a lot of, to get access to services, to
Yeah.
get access to approvals, to get therapy sessions, it takes too long. And, sometimes we have luck and it's faster, but one of the things I do see that there's a gap is that between the diagnosis and you start, getting acquainted and getting those therapy and see what he needs, what he doesn't, it's slow. And the other, I would say, gap is the financial gap, financial literacy. I think this is not a topic that's often discussed. And I think that should be something that should be included not only in the school, but for example, workshops within schools and all that for parents.
Yeah.
Because you need to plan, regardless. However, anybody thinks there's some parents that don't like to talk about their finances or not, but it's something that it needs to be addressed at one point,
Yeah. Thank you so much,
of course.
Mhm.
Andy.
Yeah, thank you,
Back to
Gabriela.
you.
Thank you, Michael. We have a comment by Gracie Vincent, and wow, this is an important comment. So she says an autism child must have full, or well, she means attention from the caregiver. I used to see about a child years ago. That's interesting, Gracie. That's really interesting. That's really interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. So, Michael, I find it really intriguing that there's so many different aspects to autism that we never heard of or even thought about. and it's really deep and profound. Now, you had an experience in 2022 with regards to a change in your corporate position and COVID 19. What would you say was that mental shift, or maybe it was a combination of both mental and emotional shift that brought you to a place where you realize everything now is going to be different?
I think, like I mentioned, that denial phase, but when you transition to denial to acceptance phase,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you know, everything you thought that was important, it's not anymore. Everything you thought that, you live in this cloud, but when real stuff happens, like a curveball, you start seeing life differently, right?
Wow.
And I would say when that acceptance phase is very important because from my perspective, you know, it affected my ego, as
Mm-hmm.
a man because you want your son to be a baseball player, or a son, and it doesn't mean he can't.
Yeah.
He could whatever he wants to be, but along the way challenges are going to be there. So everything you thought your the American dream, what we call here, was going to be, it shifts everything. And when you get into the acceptance phase, what I thought the American dream was, what I thought that was going to be our life, actually I am living the American dream now, fully blessed because we
Wow.
we accept we accept
Yes.
our new reality. We
Yes.
adjusted. We are adaptable. We're flexible. We understand that everything. There's something that my wife and ourselves, we here in the house, we see everything from a lens of, we write everything in pencil and not pen,
Mm.
and we understand that everything can change and we can go back and not
Yeah.
not be so hard on ourselves. That's what we're
All right.
trying to do.
All right.
So I would say that acceptance phase just shows you that. And whatever we thought was the American dream, again, we're doing it now because we're fully blessed, and we're very, very happy with where we are right now.
Thank you so much. I love it. This is really deep and resonating. So
Yeah.
Gracie has two more comments here. I just like them to be played across the screen so we can comment. Okay, so she says, "I did miss her. She did love me, and I loved the
So,
same, 100%." Yeah, and before that, she said, "And we built a love. She was very open with me. I did love her. Love, 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 love." That's what I keep hearing, and that's so important. Michael, earlier on, and after this, we're going to have the thought of the week. You mentioned something about people choosing to be a prayer warrior
hmm
rather than going through the aspect of denial and not willing to accept reality. How
hmm
important is that spiritual connection, and what role did it play in your lives having to deal with that challenge with Christian?
I would say everything because now you're not, you leave everything in God's hands.
Hmm.
And really leaving everything in God's hands.
Yes, yes,
You know,
yes.
and and it's tough because, let me see how I'm going to say that. I'm thinking in Spanish, talking in English, but there's something that's like
Oh my!
the person. Let me see. The person who saves you is the one that never harmed you,
Wow, I love that. I love that. That's huge. That's
and
huge.
that's what that's when you start seeing it that way. Before maybe you would go against the principles and morals, and you wanted to have your own life, but in
Hmm.
reality, the one who really blesses you is the one that never harmed you in any way. And when you see it that way and you put everything in God's hands and you start seeing results and you start being more in peace of mind and understanding that you got to do your part, right, and everything will fall, but you got to take accountability. And
Yes.
I think having accountability plus putting everything in God's hands is the perfect formula.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much. So now we're gonna have the thought of the week,
hmm
and I will have one more question for Michael and hand him over to Gabriella. So next, let's have the thought of the week. Okay, so the thought of the week: the reality of our lives are found in the day that we were born and the realization of our purpose for being born. Let me repeat that. The reality of our lives are found in the day that we were born and the realization of our purpose for being born. So, speaking about purpose, Michael, would you say that there is some level of fulfillment and your life has now much more purpose and meaning since you have taken that journey with regards to dealing with um, Christian in a more proactive manner and just facing reality and as you say so rightfully, leaving everything up to God?
Yeah, and I would say any parent, that when you gather that data, the one we talked about, you
Hmm.
also do an inventory of yourself.
Right.
You're going to see something that a lot of people don't think about it this way, but you develop a lot of skill sets that
Mm.
CEOs have and all these leaders have, because when you have a child that cannot defend themselves, but you can, you defend them, you become persistent, you become this have this sense of curiosity, you have this sense of accountability, you become a different person because you start acquiring these skill sets
Yeah.
that a lot of leaders have. And when you start acquiring these, because you're going through a lot of mindset shifts, a lot of hard conversations. You start to need to make decisions by yourself, knowing that those decisions are not going to affect you. And you start making, this difference. That's where I think these skill sets develop. And then you want to help others. And you want to help others that, are going through this type of challenges and purpose, I would say, starts bringing up light. And that's how I created the blog. I created a blog because I couldn't find a place that have had information, the one I was seeking first. And secondly, all the articles I was reading were 7 years old, 8 years
Mm.
old.
Yeah.
Nothing was new. Nobody was writing about it, and it became very frustrating. The same thing for the financial part. I came became this insurance planning because when I started looking for my own insurance planner, everybody just wanted to sell me something or recruit me. So I just said, what can I do to be able to serve others?
Right.
And that's how this came about. So I would say just those parents who are feeling that, that victim slash worried slash a lot of things, just know that throughout this time you're acquiring all these skill sets,
Yes.
and if you really look and apply them in other areas in your life, you're just going to thrive.
Wow. Wow. I love it. Gabriella?
Thanks, Andy.
Yes.
More and more as I'm listening to Michael, I'm hearing two words, which is denial and
Hmm.
acceptance. Now,
Yes.
I'm thinking about the grieving process, right? And I know that a lot of persons go through grief. Grief is something that is not, you don't have a timeline,
Mm.
right? And there are different stages that persons may go through, not in a particular order, but you went through that stage of denial. Did you go through also the stage of anger? Were you at that stage where you became depressed? Were you at that stage where you were bargaining and saying, Lord, if maybe if it's my fault, if I do this, no, Lord, you'll turn him around. Did you go through those different stages when it comes to the diagnosis of your child? And what advice would you give to those persons who may be stuck in those phases and may not reach to that point of acceptance and saying, Lord, I'm putting it in your hands. They might be in the anger stage still. They may be, still trying to grasp the information, or they may be depressed still. What
Mm.
advice would you give to those persons who maybe stuck in that stage of grief when it comes to the diagnosis of an autistic child?
Yeah. Mm. You guys ask good questions. That's good. That's good. Putting me here in the spot, but it's good.
Yeah.
I would say, what I mentioned earlier. If you, start first, gather your thoughts and see it from a way that it's not your fault, but it's your responsibility.
Yeah.
Because if you start thinking, oh, it's my fault, I'm angry, I'm this again, then falls that you're only thinking about what you feel, right? But if you start seeing the way, okay, whatever I feel, I feel it, but I still have to feed, I still have to take care, I still have to do this. You cross over from just hitting yourself on the head and taking responsibility, and that time that you're wasting angry, you can invest it in improving, um, because you do waste time when you think about it. All those thoughts that you had, never nothing happened, right? That happened to me. I thought, no, this happened to me, and what's going to happen, 90% of what I thought never happened. 90% of all those sleepless nights, I could have slept better.
Yeah.
But it's because I was, and that slash victim mentality, right? Because I was only thinking about how I felt, how I thought. And you need to take into consideration a lot of things, and when you start wasting time on that and not investing in improving yourself, improve your marriage, this is hard on marriages. There's the divorce rate in special needs is very high, and
Wow.
this can either make your marriage or break it, right? So instead of wasting time and thinking about yourself, why don't you just sit down with your spouse and just ask him or her, how do you feel, right? And really, listen, right? and
Yes.
and and listen to your spouse, and just, hey, what's your thought about around this? Hey, what I think this and you think this, and start having those deep conversations, and instead of just thinking about how you feel, in the bad sense. I'm talking about anger, and I'm talking, and just do that reflection, because I do think it's important that when this diagnosis or whatever you believe that you have, that gut feeling that needs to be addressed, you are now second. The
Yeah.
first is going to be that person that needs care. And you need to strategize. You need to understand, for example, in our case, I let me see how some things I would do before I'm not doing it. There's triggers, for example, that Christian would have that I know that would, you know, full blowout, and I just stopped doing it. For example, music in the car, or there was a certain, I don't know, noise that he heard. We were years without going out to a restaurant, right? Because there were so many, meltdowns, or we felt judgment by the families next to us. Nothing wrong because they were going out, but there was a lot of things that we went through, and I would just say that when you have that peace and you accept it and you start thinking about ways that how can you get better. Actually, something that helped me by not going out, I started cooking better. I started cooking way better, and
Wow. Love it.
and by cooking better, everybody ate. We were able to introduce some type of foods to him because he was a very picky eater. By having patience. So again, you gotta see this as a blessing. Um, you gotta see this as something that you've been assigned with a responsibility, that to care, to be able to lift this loved one up, and at the same time you're lifting yourself up.
Hmm. Wow.
Thank you so much for sharing that,
Yeah.
and I just want to highlight to anyone who may misunderstand that it's not about not seeing about yourself as well as you would be taking care of your autistic child. You yourself also need that care. So if you think you reach at that junction where, it's becoming so overwhelming, it's becoming frustrating, please reach out to someone who can
Mhm.
actually help you all go through that faith, because as Michael said, you need that community, you need that A team to be around you in order to help you go through this process.
Yeah.
I just want to piggyback a little bit on your fatherhood experience.
Before you do that, Gabriella, the puppy's on the screen, so you need to read.
Mommy. Good
Yes.
night, she says. Touchy subject tonight, have me speechless, but I must say to Michael that God has given him strength, wisdom, knowledge to come this far so that he can help others. Keep pressing on, and God will take you through. Thank you
Wow.
so much for that encouragement.
And we have one by Wesley as well. You could put up Wesley's own as well, Bex. There you go. Gabriella, you can read this one as well.
Okay, and Wesley Ryan says, I have seen children with autism and wonder what it is. What is the set future plan for parents who don't have the financial ability to afford a plan for that child's future? What then? Am I always in a state of am I always in a sad state for that child?
Wow.
That's a good,
So,
something that going back to that comment. I think this is where I mentioned that as a parent, you acquire skill sets
Yeah.
that, you acquire it with experience. And what I would suggest is those skill sets, apply it to either entrepreneurship, start doing something outside so you can increase that income, or doing something to reduce your debt, right?
mm,
But you don't wait for the government or anybody to do it. If you know that you're having situations from a financial standpoint, you already are acquiring skills that a lot of people pay for it.
Yeah.
You're acquiring it on a day-to-day basis. Try to see how you can go into either getting promoted within your own employer, or doing a side hustle. Not everybody's a business owner, but if you can, try to do like a side hustle, something that can increase your income so you can either again save or have a plan, or reduce expenses. But these are the skill sets you need to apply outside of your house now.
mm, wow. Okay. Gabriella, you're still on a roll, I know.
I still have so many, but
Let's do
when
it.
when it comes to fatherhood, you spoke about the challenges that it will have because yes, you want your child to be this and that. I'm not saying that it wouldn't happen; it may take a longer time. But what encouragement would you give to the fathers out there who may be listening, who may have an autistic child and is challenged mentally, thinking, their identity is being questioned, their purpose is
Mhm.
being questioned.
Yeah.
What encouragement would you give to that father listening right now?
Can you repeat it? I couldn't, maybe something in the audio. Can you repeat it again?
No problem. Are you hearing me now?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So when it comes to fatherhood and dealing with an autistic child, I am asking what encouragement would you give to a father who may be challenged, mentally going through this situation, with their identity, questioning their purpose in life. What encouragement as a father would you give to the fathers who may be listening right now, who may be having, who may have an autistic child?
You're not alone. You know, these type of thoughts, everybody goes through them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Even myself at one point,
Yeah.
you start questioning even life. The way you were raised. You start questioning the way your decisions in the past. You start questioning everything, and again, that helps you put inventory, I would say, in your thoughts. But it also mm, helps you, I would say, plan what's the next step, because regardless, however you feel, regardless how your current state, you still need to sit down and plan. That's something that yes you need to do, but you want to plan with clarity, right? So that's what I think that I would encourage everybody to gain clarity. When I say clarity is from let's talk from a financial point of view. Something that I did when I started was, okay, now I know. First of all, I don't know until we don't know, my wife and myself, we don't know until when Christian might need support. If it's 18, if it's 40, if it's until 11, we don't know. That's the uncertainty of having a child with autism. And at least he's on the functional side. We don't know. So what's the first step is gaining clarity from a financial view, is what's coming in, what's coming out. I've spoken to parents that after they start doing a budget sheet, they noticed that they had two Netflix accounts. They were paying for swimming classes that they didn't know. You want to make sure what's coming in from an income standpoint and what's going out.
Yeah.
When you have that clarity and then you see, oh, we're going negative every month, okay, what do we need to do? Do we need to start looking for another job? Do we still need to start looking for a side hustle? Do we need to start decreasing our expenses? Or, are we buying too much in Amazon? you know you really need to have these conversations, put it there, and from there, you're going to see, okay, now we're going negative every month or every 2 months. We need to not buy that car that we were thinking about. Start
Hmm.
making small decisions. You don't have to make big decisions, right? Just small ones. This is not about just doing big things every day, or you don't need to have the answer of everything every day. You just need to make small informed decisions and celebrate those small wins. That's it. You want to
Yeah.
celebrate again, making small, informed. I'm not saying making small decisions. I'm saying making small, informed decisions, and celebrate the small wins. Either if it's from a financial point of view or just small progresses you see that your son or daughter is having. Right. So when you start incorporating that and you start making better, you start seeing results. That depression just goes away.
Yeah.
Hmm. Wow.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And over to Andy. I take over the floor.
This is going so good. I'm really moved here, Michael, by all the wonderful nuggets you have shared with us. This is certainly a clinic. It's like, hearing this all over again and just thinking, wow, this thing is so deep, it's so profound.
Yeah.
And, when I think about it, I say to myself, how is it that so little attention is being paid in our country? For example, you're not hearing anything.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about from Gabriella's perspective, or from Wesley, or Bernadine, or Gracie, or Dexter.
Hmm.
But when I think about it, this month, you reminded me, is Autism Month internationally, right? Am I correct?
Autism Awareness Month.
Our
Yeah.
Autism Awareness Month. Thank you. But I'm not seeing anything happening out there. How much of an importance is your blog, and what are the different platforms that you can use to promote this thing so much more further?
Yeah.
But I mean, just from a point of educational perspective, so much we have learned this evening. Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, my blog, I would say anybody who's listening, I will provide you the links for
Mhm.
everybody can if this resonates with anybody, they can subscribe to the newsletter. The newsletter provides a lot of practical tips that are possibly not spoken about a lot, right? Like we just talked about. But regardless where the country is, this is where again that you gotta have this sense of curiosity, that regardless where the government is, where your current state, you need to start, I would say, curiosity, get in sync better with your spouse. I've seen, for those fathers out there, and possibly mothers, but I've seen a lot of fathers disconnected from their family, and it cannot be that there's a lot of fathers that know their sales quota and their commission, and that they do not know their son's progress or daughter's progress.
Wow.
And for me, I think it's getting in sync for to be able to again get in sync with the spouse, be aligned, because there's a child, loved one, if you're a caregiver, somebody that's depending on you. And again, it's good that you know your sales commission and you know everything on the work side, but the same amount of attention needs to be paid at home.
Yeah, yeah, indeed. Wow. What is the future for your blog in terms of the different platforms that you're gonna get on, the different places
Yeah.
that you're gonna turn up, and the people's lives that you're gonna touch? What is in the planning for the future of your blog, Michael?
I want to, this year we're building out a directory
Mm-hmm.
that's going to be in the blog, that are going to be us, I would say, vetted professionals from
Yeah.
IEP coaches, travel agents that, specifically focus on special needs, from lawyers, from we're trying to build that resource center for families. So whoever gets on the site, they read a blog, it resonates, but let's say they say, okay, now what? How can
Hmm.
I need to talk to somebody, not necessarily from a financial point, but
Yeah.
other areas?
Yeah.
Then they're going to be able to find a list of professionals there in different type of categories and areas that they can assist. Those professionals can assist those families. Also, in the directory, we're planning to include nonprofits. There's a lot of nonprofits out there that can help either with grants, with providing information, or something that parents may not know that they may qualify for or not.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're just trying to see how we can build out that directory to be a true resource for parents.
Hmm.
We also have a lot of, I would say, documents from the letter of intent. We have a checklist for parents when they sign up to the newsletter. They would receive a checklist. Obviously, it's here for the U.S., but I would say it applies to anywhere to just make you think outside the box of the areas you should be check marking when you're just talking about planning. We have another document, which is an ebook for siblings. In our household here, Christian has autism, Amanda does not. But we need to make sure that there's a balance between the way we're raising
Yeah.
them, right? We
Yes.
want to make sure that Amanda doesn't feel left out, even though she's little, but we also don't want to put too easy to Christian that he doesn't get out of a certain routine or habit, right? So
Mm.
that type of ebook is there. So we just, again, we want, from a parent standpoint, we want to provide as much value as possible. So that's the plan, at least for this year.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. So we just have about 40 seconds to go. I just want to repeat the thought of the week, and I will give Gabriela the last word as we wrap up on this wonderful and engaging episode of Breaking Out of Depression. The thought of the week: the reality of our lives are found in the day that we were born and the realization of our purpose for being born. The key word there, people, being purpose. Find out why God put you here, engage in that purpose, and serve it. Gabriela, welcome.
Behalf of our host, Andy Charles, and myself, and even to our large audience who's listening, I'm sure that this was very impactful. This was very insightful. It was very educational. We would have learned so much information, and I hope and I pray that those that are listening, that they understand, that they are not alone in this journey, and these practical steps could be implemented, and that they see the future for their child when it comes to autistic disorder. So I want to thank you for being so vulnerable with us. Thank you for sharing all your knowledge and all the experience that you had, and I hope that it blesses someone's heart tonight. So thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Michael, we just asked you to hold on for 2 minutes while we wrap up, and we're going to have probably a little conversation with our producer. So, in the meantime, to Bernadine, Wesley, Gracie, and all those who are listening and those who would tune into the program as you review it later on the social media platforms, please remember we are doing everything that we can to help you do everything that you can to continue to break out of depression. Until next time, we say so long, Godspeed, God bless. Bye for now. Take care, folks. We love you.
There ain't got no way, ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord, no. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without my Lord. Trouble in my way, but daily hear me say, ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way, ain't got no way. The harvest is plenty, Lord, but the workers are so few. Ain't got no way I'm gonna make it without